أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد, brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the new session. Inshallah, we'll continue till middle of Zulhijjah, or before it. We'll see how many weeks we get. Before we continue, I'll give you about 2 minutes or maybe 3 minutes. Just go through the quiz. Select the right answers that you think is the right one, and we'll get back to it at the end of our discussion. Everybody has a copy? Ready? Inshallah, in this series of gatherings, we'll be talking about the Sharia, focusing on Ijtihad, Taqleed, Ehtiyat, and other relevant issues beyond the level of those al-Masail, in order to understand how this whole system works in Islam. We'll be talking about these three concepts of Ijtihad, Taqleed, as well as Ehtiyat. We'll go into a little bit more detail than normal. And we'll also be talking about the concept of Marjaiyyat. And also, there will be a discussion at the end about Wilayat al-Faqih also. For tonight, we'll just look at the concept of the Sharia in general. And we'll begin also the discussion about Ijtihad. When it comes to the issue of Sharia, let me begin with the very basics, that when we look at Islam, unlike Christianity or other religions, like Christianity, it's not just a matter of spirituality. Islam is actually a way of life for us. Which covers all aspects of our life, from mundane to sublime issues, from personal matters like food and drink, personal hygiene, dress code, to more serious issues of life, marriage, divorce, inheritance, and even when it comes to financial, economic aspects of our life, how we earn our livelihood, how we spend our money, as well as socio-political issues. Islam also talks about the criminal justice system and judiciary. Of course, that's only relevant to a Muslim society if they choose to be governed by the Sharia law. And so when we talk about Islamic teachings, about all aspects of life, the term used is Sharia. So Sharia means the Islamic laws governing the lives of individuals as well as the society. The term itself, literally it means a path leading to the water. And it signifies the point that Sharia means the path where a thirsty person will eventually reach to the water and quench his or her thirst. When we look at the technical meaning, the word Sharia means the path, or the way I put it, the path of salvation. It is the path which quenches one's quest for salvation in the hereafter. Or, you can even say that Islamic Shariah is the path which leads the individual to the fountain of Kawthar in the hereafter. That's also one way of linking the literal meaning of Sharia with the technical meaning. That even in the Islamic Sharia, we end up with the water as the end source, but that is the Hawz Kawthar, which is the fountain of salvation and najat for us in the hereafter. In Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used this term when He talks about the five highest of the prophets, Ulul Azm. When you talk about this concept of Ulul Azm, these are the prophets who had the Sharia, Sahiban al-Shariat as we call them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about it. If you look at Surah number 42, ayat 13, Allah uses this term, شَرَعَ لَكُم مِّنَ الدِّينِ, that Allah has prescribed. Now the word shara could also mean He has legislated or prescribed. He has prescribed for you the religion, same as what He had enjoined to Nuh, مَا وَصَّى بِهِ نُوحًا وَالَّذِي أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ, and what we have revealed to you, and وَمَا وَصَّيْنَا بِهِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى وَعِيسَى, and what we enjoined to Ibrahim, Musa, and Isa, and أَقِيمُوا الدِّينَ وَلَا تَتَفَرَّقُوا فِيهِ, that you should establish the religion and do not be divided in it. This is where you get all five names. Prophet Nuh has been mentioned, Prophet Ibrahim has been mentioned, Prophet Musa has been mentioned, Prophet Isa has been mentioned. Of course, Ilayka refers to our own Prophet who is receiving this ayat. And so this is where you get the Ulul Azm prophets, the prophets who had Shariah sent with them. Of course, it doesn't mean that Adam and those who came before, till the time of Nuh, were free to do whatever they wanted to do, but the laws those days were very simple. And so Allah doesn't even take into consideration when He talks about it. He puts more the name of Nuh first, and then Ibrahim and Musa and Isa. Of course, the Prophet has been mentioned there, just to say that, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what you have been given is not very much different from what was given to other prophets. All got the Shariat and the system of law like you. Another ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used the word Shari'at, and this is the only place in Quran where the word Shari'at comes. It hasn't come in any other ayat of Quran. And this is from Surah Al-Jasiyah, Surah number 45, ayat 18. Interestingly, before that ayat, Allah talks about Prophet Musa alayhi salam and about Bani Israel, that we gave Torah to him as a basis of the laws of Musa alayhi salam. And then He says, ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاكَ عَلَى شَرِيعَةٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْرِ, that, O Muhammad, then we set you upon a path from the divine command. وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ فَاتَّبِعْهَا means therefore follow it. وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَالَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ, and do not follow the desires of those who don't know. And so we see even this concept of Sharia has been, even though just once the word has come, but it has come very clearly in the Quran. And if you contrast the first sentence of this ayat with the latter one, on one hand you are going on the path of the Sharia, following what Allah has said. The opposite that would be to follow our own desires. And so that's where the contrast you see between Sharia and non-Sharia. So this is as far as the term Shari'at is concerned and its usage in the Quran. Let us look at the place of the Shari'at in Islam itself. Basically, we know as Muslims, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us many, many commandments in the Quran as well as in the Sunnah, which was revealed through the Prophet and continued by the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. And so the first point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent many, many orders to us. Do this, don't do that. We also know that He is going to hold us accountable for whatever we do on the day of Qiyamah. And so the collective, the name for the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Sharia. And so how do we follow the Sharia? And this is where, you look at the ayat of Quran from Surah Ahzab, ayat number 36. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very clear. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَنْ يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخَيْرَ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ. Very clear. When it comes to a mu'min and a mu'mina, a believing man or a believing woman, when Allah and Rasul decide on a matter, then the mu'mina or the mu'min doesn't have any choice in their own affairs and issues. Because Allah and the Rasul have already decreed, وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. And if anyone goes against it, against the command of Allah and the Rasul, فَقَدْ ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا مُبِينًا. He has gone very open, wrong path. And so we know that Allah has given us orders. He says on the day of Qiyamah, I'm going to, hold you accountable for it. And there are very clear warnings that when it comes to Allah's and Rasul's decisions, we don't have a choice but to obey them. But how do we obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Rasul in this case? And this is where we see there are three methods by which a person can follow the Sharia. Number one, you study the Sharia, the Quran and the Sunnah of the Ma'asumeen, and you act according to your own knowledge about the Sharia. And that is known as Ijtihad. You are acting according to your own expert knowledge in that subject. The second option would be act upon the knowledge of an expert. And this is where we come to the concept of Taqleed. And then finally you come to the most precautionary path. And that's known as Ehtiyat. Now we'll talk about each one of them in detail. Tonight we'll just start a little bit of the discussion about Ijtihad. Later on when we come to the point of Taqleed, we'll talk about it. And then finally we end with the issue of Ehtiyat. Now, if I put this in an argument form, this is how I'll put it. Since Allah has issued commandments for us, and since He is going to judge us on the day of resurrection, therefore it is wajib for us to follow the Sharia by doing either Ijtihad or Taqleed or Ehtiyat. There is nothing else. And it's as simple as that. Now, when I have used this word wajib there, the question comes up, where does this wujub come from? This duty or obligation that we are saying that either we do Ijtihad or we do Taqleed or we do Ehtiyat, what is the basis of that? And this is where the Mujtahideen have discussion about it. And the discussion is that, is this a Shar'i obligation or a Aqli obligation? Is the wujub of following the Sharia in form of Ijtihad or Taqleed or Ehtiyat, is this a Shar'i issue or is it a matter of common sense? The Mujtahideen on this issue, they said this is the foundation. So you cannot just rely on the building of that foundation. You have to have a different independent basis for it. And that is where we come to aql. It is the aql, the rational proof, which says that we must follow the Sharia in one of these three ways. Now, how do we do that? Number one, there is a common sense issue or a reasons, dictate that we should avert or prevent ourselves from any possible harm. You know, we travel on the highways or we go on a journey out of town and you see there is a danger sign. You know, they say, don't go this way, you are diverted to other way. What do? Do we say, no, I'll still go straight? You know, common sense demands that if there is a danger sign there, be careful. You know, avert yourself from that path of danger. Or if you think there is a possible harm on the other side, you know, other side of the mountain, you will not go that way. You will change your direction and go the other way. And this is a very, you know, commonsensical issue. We as Muslims, we already believe in the Quran and the Sunnah. You know, we know that 124,000 prophets came. Each one of us gave us that danger sign. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to do certain things and refrain from certain other things. If you don't do this, there is a danger at the end. And what is that danger? You know, the possible harm in form of Jahannam. And so we have those signs coming one after another from 124,000 prophets. So what does the Aql say? We have to do everything that we can in order to, you know, prevent ourselves from getting hurt by that possible danger in form of Jahannam. And this is where we say that, you know, the reason dictates that we must avert the chastisements of the hellfire. And this can only be done by following the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which are known as Sharia. And the Sharia can only be followed by one of the three methods. Either you do Ijtihad, or you do Taqleed, or do you Ehtiyat. There is no any other way there. And so this is where we say that the basis of Ijtihad, Taqleed, and Ehtiyat is actually a rational argument. Because you cannot base the obligation of Sharia on the Sharia itself. There has to be a rational foundation for it. And that is why you will see, for example, the very first mas'ala in Tawzil Masail. What does it say? You know, interestingly, it begins with the words that in the matters of Aqidah, you are not allowed to have Taqleed. But in the matters of laws, you either do Ijtihad, or you do Taqleed, or you do Ehtiyat. This is the very first mas'ala in Tawzil Masail. Let me explain that slightly in a different way. Now, when we say that we can avert the possible harm, on the day of Qiyamah, if Allah says, why did you do this? One answer would be, well, I did Ijtihad. I looked at the sources of your laws, and this is what I came to as far as the conclusion. Or you can say, well, you know, I was a businessman not interested in this, but I relied on somebody who was an expert in Islamic laws. That's Taqleed. Or the third answer would be that, well, you know, I looked at the existing opinions and took the most difficult one and did Ehtiyat. And all these three answers and arguments will prevent that person from going to Jahannam. Let us look at it slightly differently here. If you see, we divide deen into two parts. On one side we have usul, and the other side we have furu. Usul has to do with our aqidah, with our belief system, and furu has to do with our actions and the laws. The beautiful words used by our ulama is usul is the foundation, the roots, and the furu are the branches. Now, for both, we need to have a proof. When it comes to aqidah, you can't just say, well, you know, do we have a proof or not? Even when it comes to amal, there is a need for the proof. So we need what we call in Arabic, Farsi, Urdu, the term would be istidlal. We need to seek the dalil. We need to find the proof for what we believe in and the basis for our actions. The difference here would be this. When it comes to usul al-din, every individual has to find the dalil and the proof. Otherwise, iman would not be, properly founded in the heart. A person has to be convinced. When it comes to furu al-din, it is not wajib on every individual to go and seek the proof for the Sharia laws. That obligation is collective. So we have the words for it. One we call wajib aini, and the other we call wajib kifai. So in usul al-din, it is wajib aini for every individual to seek proof for what they believe in. You can't say, oh, my father said there is one God, so I believe in one God. Or Maulana or the muallim in the madrasa taught us there is one God, therefore I believe in. No, we have to have some understanding on it. There should be a dalil that convinces you. On the matter of furu, also we need dalil, but not every individual have to go into that research. If some do that, it is sufficient. If no one does it, everybody is accountable. And so this is where we see in usul al-din, taqleed is not valid, but in furu al-din, either you do ijtihad, or you do taqleed, or you do Ehtiyat. And so this is the foundation of the entire, institution known as the Sharia, the legal system of Islam. And that is why you will see the first mas'ala in Tawzul Masail is very clear. It is necessary for a Muslim to believe in the fundamentals of Islam with his own insight and understanding. And he cannot follow anyone in this respect. Which means he cannot accept the word of another who knows simply because he said it. Of course, there are some details about it. We'll leave it some other time. In matters of religious laws, apart from the ones clearly defined, a person must either be a mujtahid himself, or if he's not a mujtahid, he must follow one mujtahid, and that's taqleed. Or if he is neither a mujtahid or a muqallid, then he must act on precaution. Which gives him this satisfaction that on the day of Qiyamah, when he gives the answer, he will be able to save himself from the possible danger of Jahannam. So let us look at one hadith which supports this rational argument. Sheikh Tusi actually narrates from Sheikh Mufid, and he goes all the way to the sixth Imam in the tafsir of an ayat which is in Surah Al-An'am, ayat number 149, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلِلَّهِ الْحُجَّةُ الْبَالِغَةُ, means to Allah belongs the sufficient argument. Nobody will be able to argue against Allah's argument on the day of Qiyamah. What is that al-Hujjatul Baligha? Imam explains, our sixth Imam, Imam Jaffari al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, إن الله تبارك وتعالى يقول للعبد يوم القيامة عبدي أكنت عالما. On the day of Qiyamah, Allah will say to His servant, O my servant, were you a learned person? فَإِنْ قَالَ نَعَمْ, and if he says yes, Allah will ask him, أَفَلَا عَمِلْتَ بِمَا عَلِمْتَ, did you act according to what you knew? If he says yes and I am an alim, then the question would be, did you act according to your ilm or not? And then if he says, وَإِنْ قَالَ كُنْتُ جَاهِلًا, if he says I was not an alim, I didn't know, I was an ignorant person, then what will be responsible Allah? قَالَ لَهُ أَفَلَا تَعَلَّمْتَ حَتَّى تَعْمَلْ, why didn't you not learn so that you could act accordingly? And so this is the al-Hujjatul Baligha, this is the sufficient or the final proof of Allah against this person on the day of Qiyamah. And so either we do ijtihad or we do taqleed. If we don't know, then we ask somebody else who knows and act accordingly. And Ehtiyat is again somewhere in between, where you take the most precautionary path when it comes to actions. And so even the arguments that we have on a rational basis is supported by the saying of Imam Jaffar al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Now let us look at Ijtihad, the basis of Ijtihad tonight, and next week we will go more into details of it. First of all, the word Ijtihad itself, literally it comes from jahad and juhud. Eventually the meaning would be the same. Literally it means to endure, to strive for something, to work hard for something. And that is where even the word jihad comes from it. Because in jihad also a mujahid is, struggling hard to achieve his objective. The technical meaning of ijtihad is different. In fiqh, when we say ijtihad, it means there are different forms used in Arabic language. استخراج الحكم الشرعي من دليله المقرر له, or تحصيل الحجة على الحكم الشرعي بالفعل. Deriving the Sharia law from its established source. So ijtihad, according to the way it's defined in Shia fiqh, is actually the process of deriving the laws from their sources. So a mujtahid is someone who goes to the sources, takes the laws out, and then he puts in a simple form so that he himself and others can follow. Now when we look at this definition, I don't want to go into details of this, but if you remember last year when we talked about ghaibat and zuhur, there was a discussion about the challenges during the time of ghaibat, and we talked about the challenge of akhbarism and the difference between the two methods within Isnad Shari school, the usuli method and the akhbari method. If you go to the slides of last year, I think I was looking at it, it's 30th June, year 2010, that night's lecture, we did a comparison and the difference between the akhbari and the usuli method. But the way ijtihad is defined here, deriving the Sharia laws from its established sources, would not be a matter of conflict between the usuli and the akhbari schools. Both will agree. I don't think any akhbari scholar of Shia Isnad Shari school would say, to derive Sharia laws from their sources like Quran and Sunnah is a problem. No, this is not a problem. This is actually wajib. And that is where, Ayatollah Khoui in his lectures of Ijtihad, after talking about the definition of Ijtihad, he has a beautiful comment. I thought maybe that would be worthwhile repeating here, where he says, what is rejected by the akhbaris is not what is proven by the usulis. And what the usulis would like to prove is not rejected by the akhbaris. So the dispute is more semantics. They are opposing something else, and the usulis are proving something else. Of course, there are differences in some of the issues within it, but the basic concept of ijtihad, to go and derive the Islamic laws from its established sources, would not be a matter of dispute between the usuli or the akhbari schools. For example, the usuli ulama would say we'll go by the Quran and the hadith and ijma and aql. Akhbari will say, well, Quran only if there is a hadith about it. And in hadith, so there is dispute in how do you identify the sources. But they will not dispute the actual process of deriving the Sharia laws from the established sources. Maybe in the sources where they would have a problem. For example, usuli will say we divide the hadith into 4 categories. Akhbari will say only 2 categories. Akhbari will say we'll take all ahadith from the 4 early books. The usuli will say we will be scrutinizing each one of them. So the dispute is more in how things are done, but not in the actual, process of deriving the Sharia laws from its sources. So in actual ijtihad, there is not really a dispute between the 2 schools. When it comes to ijma and aql also, for example, the akhbaris we say we don't accept the ijma of the ulama or the ummah. The usuli also say, of course, we don't accept it. We only look at the ijma of the ulama of the early days as a window into a sunnah of the ma'asumi. So even the ijma by itself is not an independent source in the eyes of the usuli ulama. They say that if the ulama of the early days all were unanimous on a matter, and we don't see a hadith about it, we can take it for granted that there must have been a statement from the ma'asum, which has not survived till our time, but that was the basis of the action of the ashab of the early ulama. So it's more about the issue of, akhbari are rejecting something, and usuli are actually looking at the same thing, same names, but in different, perspective. Anyway, I don't want to confuse you here. Let me give you one example here. The word ijtihad itself. Sometimes you will see in the akhbari writings, they say, well, we have many ahadith from the Ma'asumin say ijtihad is condemned. Many statements from early Shia ulama saying ijtihad is batil. And this is where you have to see that how the meaning of the word of ijtihad has changed from time to time. Till about 7th century of the Hijrah, the Sunnis were using the word ijtihad, the Shias were refraining from it. And the Sunni fiqh were using the word ijtihad in the meaning of ra'i. Ra'i means personal opinion of an individual, not necessarily based on Quran and Hadith. Sometimes they would use ijtihad in the meaning of ra'i as an independent source for Sharia law. So they have Quran, and they also have the the Sunnah, and then they also have their own ijtihad as an independent source of law. In Shia Islam, ijtihad is not an independent source of law. It is actually the method of studying the sources of law. It was Abu Hanifa was the main proponent of this system of ijtihad, where ijtihad was basically considered to be a source alongside the Quran and the Sunnah. But then in the 7th century, an alim by the name of Muhaqqiq al-Hilli, he used the word ijtihad with a different meaning, where he says ijtihad doesn't mean that this is actually a source, rather it's a process of deriving the Sharia law from its established sources. And that's where the meaning changes now from the Sunni usage of it to the Shia usage. Now, Muhaqqiq al-Hilli, I have a question there. I don't know how many of you answered that. Muhaqqiq al-Hilli and Allama Hilli are 2 different persons. Allama Hilli was a nephew of Muhaqqiq Hilli. Muhaqqiq Hilli was the uncle from the mother's side of Allama Hilli. And he has a book called Shariah al-Islam, which is still considered to be one of the prominent textbooks of Shia fiqh, used in the Hawza also. So he basically used the word ijtihad in a different meaning. And so whenever you see there is a hadith of the Imams condemning ijtihad, or the sayings of the early ulama condemning ijtihad, it is ijtihad in the pre-7th century meaning, not the way it is used later on. And so that's where sometimes you will see, in Shia Islam there was no ijtihad, this is a bid'ah which started later on. No. This has been going on from day one, only the names have changed. Now we come to this issue of ijtihad. I thought maybe this would be a matter of interest for you. There are two types of ijtihad. One is partial and incomplete ijtihad, where a person does ijtihad only in some areas of fiqh. So, there is a person who is new into the field of ijtihad, looks at the issue, moon sighting issue, for example, focuses on that, becomes top expert on that. But then he is not concerned about other issues. You ask him, about namaz, they will say, well, go and follow the marja. But on this one issue, I done ijtihad, this is my opinion. So this is known as incomplete or partial ijtihad. And a person who does that, he is known as mujtahid mutajazzi. Mutajazzi means juz, just a partial mujtahid, who is mujtahid only in 1, 2, or 10 areas of fiqh, not all areas of fiqh. Then we have another kind of ijtihad where a person does complete ijtihad in all areas of fiqh. Such a mujtahid is known as mujtahid mutlaq. So these are the two different, categories of mujtahideen. One is mutajazzi and the other is mutlaq. Now, nobody can become mujtahid mutlaq before going through this process of tajazzi. Because initially when he starts to do the research, he cannot one day and say, well, I'm done. Started today and I'm completed everything. It takes a long, long time. So this is how the mujtahid's, process of ijtihad starts. Initially he is mujtahid mutajazzi, but then gradually he develops himself further, and it takes, years and years, if not decades, for a mujtahid to reach from the point of mutajazzi to become mujtahid mutlaq. Now what is the difference? Implications of these two different levels of ijtihad. Number one, following his own views. If a person has done ijtihad, true ijtihad on an issue, even if he doesn't do ijtihad in any other issue, on that matter, he has to follow his ilm. So when it comes to the issue of following his own views, mujtahid mutajazzi and mujtahid mutlaq are on the same level. It is haram for them to do taqleed, for one in that particular issue and for the other in all issues. It is haram for a mujtahid to do taqleed. They have to follow their own conclusions and their own knowledge. But then we come to other issues. Giving fatwa and becoming marja taqleed. This is not for mujtahid mutajazzi. You are still immature. You are still incomplete. So you cannot become marja taqleed. This is only for somebody who is mujtahid mutlaq. What about the seat of judgment, to become a qazi, where his judgment are enforceable and final? Again, that is not for mujtahid mutajazzi, it is for mujtahid mutlaq only. And finally, the issue of managing awqaf, endowments where there is no custodian, or religious funds. This again is not the domain of mujtahid mutajazzi. It can only be managed by mujtahid mutlaq. So keep in mind that there is a difference between these two levels of ijtihad and the implications on the practical level. Let me make a point here that we can have thousands of mujtahideen in the Shia world, and it's a matter of pride. But not all of the mujtahideen become Marjai Taqleed. Only few of them become Marjai Taqleed. The word Marjai Taqleed means the point of reference for Taqleed, means the person to whom people refer and do his Taqleed. The second point here is a mujtahid, even if he is a mujtahid mutlaq, he does not automatically become a Marjai Taqleed. A mujtahid mutlaq has to teach in a hawza till the level where he starts giving dars kharij. Dars kharij is the highest level of fiqh in the hawza, where there are no more textbooks. The students are expected to know the sources now. And the teacher is basically giving his ijtihad now, and he's training the students how to do ijtihad. And that takes decades, if not, a lifetime, for a person from the state of mujtahid mutlaq to the issue of becoming a Marjai Taqleed. Now, once a mujtahid of that level who is training others and has done ijtihad in all levels, only then he may become Marjai Taqleed. That's only when he issues his risala. There were many Maraji now who were mujtahid mutlaq for many years. They had already trained mujtahideen, but they had said, nothing to do with Marjaiyyat. I'm not interested in it. And so you could have many people who have mujtahid mutlaq, training mujtahideen, but still were not ready by themselves to become Marjai Taqleed. So remember that to become mujtahid itself is a big task and a privilege. And then from mujtahid to reach to the level of mujtahid mutlaq needs a lifetime. And from there, if the chance comes for that fellow to become Marjai Taqleed, these are not simple matters. Just to give an example of, degrees in the universities. If somebody has a doctorate in fiqh, does it mean he is a Marjai Taqleed? You look at the example here. Marjaiyyat is not like getting a doctorate degree. That's just the beginning of the story. A person can do research in one area very thoroughly, and the university will accept and praise him for his research in that one area and honor him with the doctorate degree. But that doesn't mean he's become a mujtahid, mutlaq or Marjai Taqleed. Only when this fellow, then he's employed, becomes an associate professor, and later on becomes a full professor. And a time comes when he is no more teaching undergraduates. He's only supervising, PhD students, how to do their research. Later on, this person, after going through all those levels, he might become a marja. So it's not just getting the degree. Getting that PhD is just the beginning of the process. And so, I think it's time we understand these issues. It's not just a matter of getting a piece of paper. It takes many years. If you look at, for example, Ayatollah Khoui, he had actually gone through this whole process of all the abwab, the sections of fiqh, more than once before even he reached to the level of ijtihad. Means he would have gone through the whole arguments of the fiqhi issues more than once, teaching. And in that process, maybe even his views will be changing. And so it's something which, is a very serious and a strong institution that we have in Shia Islam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give long life to the living Maraji, and may He strengthen and save this institution, because this is the foundation of how to apply the laws of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Ma'asumeen in the changing circumstances of the time. If we can just very quickly go through the quiz that you have answered. Now you know the answer, isn't it? Number 1, Sharia literally means a path leading to, is it A, B, or C? It could be any of the three, because a path leading to water. Okay? There are 3 ways of following the Sharia: Ijtihad, Taqleed, and the third one would be Ehtiyat. Taqleed is acceptable in matters of usul al-din. It is false. In Shia view, Ijtihad is a source of law or a process of deriving the law, a consensus of the scholars. The answer is B. The term Ijtihad was first used in different meaning by Shia scholars in 7th century. A person who has done Ijtihad in only some issues of fiqh is known as Mujtahid Mutajazzi, that's C. In Dars Kharij, the Mujtahid C trains students to do Ijtihad. Which of the 3 sentences is correct? Which one is the right one? B. Every marja taqleed is a mujtahid, but not the other way around. This term Sharia has occurred in the Quran only once. And is Muhaqqiq Hilli and Allama Hilli the same person? No. We have about 4 or 5 minutes if you have any questions. Okay, the brother is asking what are the levels of, mujtahid, the terms that we hear, Ayatullah al-Uzma and things like that. The actual technical words are mujtahid. All other titles that you hear are more honorary titles, which change from place to place and time to time. It's not really well defined. These days, the term Ayatullah al-Uzma is used for a mujtahid mutlaq who is marja taqleed. All others are just called Ayatullah. So the problem is that these terms were used more seriously in the Hausa environment. But after the revolution in Iran, even the journalists in Iran didn't know. They just look at the amama and abaqaba. They didn't have any different, like the bishop and the cardinal have different dress. No, somebody was asking me once, he saw one of the friends that we have in Toronto wearing a qaba, and I was wearing a jubba that day. And so they're talking to one another, and they will say, Maulana Rizvi has a higher rank because he's wearing this, jubba. And I heard about it. I said, there's nothing like that. It depends on our style, what we like. So there was a problem even in Iran after the revolution where the journalists didn't really, even Iranians didn't know how to address somebody. And so these titles became a little bit more loose, unfortunately. Anyone, especially if they have position, they would just call them Ayatullah that easily. But remember that those are all honorary titles being used. The main issue is that a person has to be mujtahid mutlaq for that person to then even reach to Marjaiyyat. That is even a long story from that stage to the second one. Yes. The issues, the question is, the Maraji or the Mujtahideen, when they have difference of opinion. No, it's not only 2, 3 masail. There are many. Inshallah, when we talk about Ijtihad next week, we'll go through some practical examples. That on this issue, why one is saying one thing and the other is saying the other, although the sources are all same. So we'll see where the differences come in. Many times the differences are more on the basis of Ehtiyat, but sometimes they are very drastic. But we'll talk about the examples later on, inshallah. The term a'lam is used among the mujtahideen again, or the maraji, if there are, let's say, more than one person. Then the question of a'lam comes in. That, inshallah, we'll talk about it. When we talk about taqleed, that you have to do taqleed of the a'lam. A'lam means the most learned among them. What is the criteria of that? Inshallah, we'll talk about it in details. Anything from the ladies? No? Not offhand, but there are many examples. Inshallah, I'll look for it specifically and we'll talk about it. Okay, inshallah. So we'll meet. We'll keep the lecture times till 8. We'll do the namaz at 7:30. Although the namaz time is earlier, but we'll just keep it at 7:30 on Wednesdays at least, and then start the program at 8 inshallah. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.